Welcome back. We want to turn now to the latest fallout amid the unrest in Iran. Today, the Treasury Department announcing new sanctions against what it called the architects of their crackdown, saying that the administration stands with the Iranian people's calls for freedom and justice. A U.S.-based human rights activist news agency estimates more than 2,600 people have been killed in the weeks-long protests, and more than 19,000 others have been arrested. Yesterday, the president said he'd been informed that the killings had suddenly stopped, although he was vague about where he got this information. Today, the White House saying the regime halted the execution of several hundred protesters.
The president received a message, as he revealed to all of you and the whole world yesterday, that the killing and the executions will stop. And the president understands today that 800 executions that were scheduled and supposed to take place yesterday were halted. And so the president and his team are closely monitoring this situation, and all options remain on the table.
During a brief phone call this morning, I asked the president about whether he decided to take action in Iran. The president telling me, quote, "I'm not going to tell you that," but added, "We saved a lot of lives yesterday." Joining me now is Mike Froman, president of the Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I do want to dive in and start with Iran. Yesterday, the president appearing to back down from possible military action. But one of the president's staunchest allies, Senator Lindsey Graham, posting this on social media, quote, "Every indication that I've seen says the Iranian regime's killing of protesters is still very much in full swing. The death toll is mounting by the hour, hoping that help is on the way." What do you think an effective response would look like at this point?
Well, first of all, we should note that we don't have a lot of good direct information about what's going on the ground there. There's been a total blackout. The news, there are very few journalists on the ground. The internet is down. And so we're all sort of looking for more accurate information. It's possible that the regime canceled some scheduled public hangings, but there could well be killings still going on the street of protesters, as Senator Graham said. Look, I think in terms of the response, the president has said we're locked and loaded and help is on its way. That's pretty far out there on a limb. Now, if the quid pro quo is no public executions and therefore I won't do anything, then he can say he's achieved victory. If he wants something more to support the protesters, though, in their efforts, then there's got to be something more. He's announced tariffs against countries that are trading with Iran, but there's a lot of uncertainty about how those tariffs are going to be implemented. There's efforts to potentially put Starlink and other capacity back up and running. And the real question is, on the military side, what can be done? And we know that there's been consideration of various options. Right now, there's no carrier strike group in the region, but one is heading there from the Indo-Pacific. And evidently, the White House is considering various military options and other non-kinetic options, cyber and other options. But it could be about attacking the intelligence agencies, the Revolutionary Guard, the munitions. It could be attacking command and control. It's really about whether you want to deter Iranian action or whether you want to prevent them from being able to crack down on the protesters. And clearly, the options are still being developed.
Well, to that point, a lot of people, a lot of lawmakers on Capitol Hill, foreign policy experts have made the argument what happened in Venezuela is so vastly different, and the government of Venezuela and the country of Venezuela, than Iran. In other words, regime change in Iran is infinitely more complicated than it was in Venezuela, and Venezuela was obviously remarkably complicated.
But each country is very different. And what you have going, though, on Iran is a widespread protest, which you did not have going on in Venezuela at the time. So this protest, which started with the bazaar in Tehran, which is significant because that's where the protests in 1979 began, supporting the Islamic Revolution. It spread to other cities. It's now spread to ethnic minority communities as well. It's driven in part by economics and how bad the economy is doing. 50% inflation, 70% inflation for food. The currency has declined by 80% against the dollar. They're running out of water in Tehran. The government has been incompetent in managing, basic affairs of state there. You have that on top of aspirations of the Iranian people and pushback against the oppression at a time when Iran is in a particularly weak position, and where its investment in proxies and in nuclear and missile programs over the years seems to have taken a lot of resources away from the domestic economy, and people are really chafing under that.
I do want to ask you about another foreign issue that's in focus right now, the president's threats to take Greenland by military force if necessary, he says. We know that top officials from Denmark and Greenland were meeting with the Secretary of State, other officials here yesterday. What do you make of where things stand? Do you see a potential off-ramp, particularly given the fact that Europe is saying this would be the end of NATO, and alarm bells have gone off, quite frankly?
You know, Kirsten, we took a Council on Foreign Relations fact-finding mission to Greenland back in August and came back with the distinct impression that we don't need to buy it, we don't need to invade it, that all we need to do is ask. That the Greenlanders and the Danes are very happy to work with us to expand our military presence in Greenland. We used to have 17 bases, now we have 1, and hopefully we can find ways of working with NATO to strengthen Arctic security, including on Greenland, rather than dividing NATO by threatening military action.
All right, Mike Froman, thank you so much for being here to cover a range of topics. Hope to have you back soon. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.